All right. Good morning, all you lovely people. So good to see you this morning. Welcome to the home of Unitarian Universalism in Central Washington, where we live our values centered in love. My name is Rita Salama, and I serve on the Board of Trustees and the worship team and wherever I can be helpful, such as today when I'm your celebrant. If you are a visitor this morning, we are so glad you are here. We welcome every person of goodwill, just as you are, whatever body you inhabit, whomever you love, whatever your age, you are welcome here. We invite everyone to join us for coffee and treats and conversation after the service, both in person and on Zoom. For the folks on Zoom, you'll find the order of service in the chat. And for everyone here in the congregation, if you'll turn and look at the camera above the exit sign and wave to all those people on Zoom. Hi, everyone. And now, please take a moment to greet those around you, especially if there's somebody you don't know. We have a couple of brief announcements. The first one is that the Zoom Friday happy hour is starting again with thanks to Barb de St. Croix. And yay. You can see the announcements this week about how to connect to that. And the next announcement is that our 2025 pledge drive has begun. Last week I told everyone that we need to move out of scarcity and into a place of abundance. So here are the dates to remember about the pledge drive. Today, you can pick up your pledge packet after the service if you haven't already done so. And for those on Zoom and those not here today, we will be emailing, delivering by hand, or snail mailing packets. The packet and pledge form are also on our website. And then after the service today, stay for the forum to find out more about the budget from our treasurer, Larry Tabisca. And then return your pledge by April 8th, and then on April 19th, come to an abundant celebration dinner. It will be at the Wenatchee Museum and Cultural Center. And now Nancy Warner is going to tell you about why she pledges. Nancy.
Good morning. So Chuck and I have lived in this valley for 25 years now, which is amazing to me. And the big mistake that we made was not coming to Cuff a lot earlier. So kudos to those of you who are new to the area and have found Cuff, because what a great place to be at this point in history. So we really support Cuff because it's a very functional organization. You know, it's a good investment, we feel like, of our time and energy. And one of the reasons that I think we really like Cuff and pledge to it is because it's a team sport. Not only do people donate money to provide this gorgeous building and our wonderful music and all the things that we enjoy, but everybody participates. We have a really high percentage of people doing stuff to make things happen here. And so I really like being part of an organization like that. Of course, we also really appreciate not only the community that we have here. I mean, it's a very safe, welcoming place. I know if I needed anything, I could ask any of you. So I feel like that is something not everybody has. So that kind of trust and camaraderie. But also, we really appreciate the connections with the larger community. And so, you know, we've been through social justice. That's a hallmark of Unitarian Universalism, and we've been living that here at Cuff. And even, it's been almost 2 years since we started the Interfaith Justice Coalition. It's been 5 years since we started the pantry. And so those are just some reasons that we think this nonprofit is worth investing in and why we are involved. So write your checks.
Thank you, Nancy. Our pledge drive the theme is rooted in love and growing in generosity. So when you fill out your pledge form, please be as generous as you can. The theme of today's service is the culture of dis, or going beyond that. And as in the announcements, Reverend Thomas defined dis as what it means is to treat someone with disrespect or contempt, to harshly criticize or call someone derogatory names. The Native Americans have been dissed throughout our history and became our first target of cancel culture. In a speech in 1892, Captain Richard Henry Pratt used the now well-known phrase, "Kill the Indian in him and save the man." This led to Native American children forcibly being taken from their families. Their hair was cut, their clothes taken away and replaced with Western clothes. They were forced to attend boarding schools, which had a goal of civilizing them. And they were forbidden to speak their native language. Separating the people from their land was another way that the indigenous people were dissed, including the Pisquosa, who were the stewards of the land where we are worshiping, where they had lived for thousands of years. They still live here, even though their land was taken because the US government broke treaty obligations. We stand alongside our indigenous neighbors as they continue their traditions and seek to have all their rights recognized. We acknowledge our shared responsibility to sustain right relations with each other and the land. Now, let us rise in body or spirit to sing our opening song, Gathered Here, number 389 in the hymnal. The words are also on the screens, and we're going to repeat this 3 times.
Gathered here in the spirit of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the middle land of power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the spirit of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
My elder colleague, Gordon McKeeman, wrote a piece in his book of meditations called Out of the Ordinary, and this is inspired by one of those. Ministry is a quality of relationship between and among human beings that beckons forth hidden possibilities. Ministry invites people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and with one another. In this hour, we carry forth a long heritage of people being present with and to and for others in their terrors, in their torments, in their grief, in their misery and pain, knowing that those feelings are our feelings too. Here we carry forward a long heritage of celebrating the triumphs of the human spirit, the miracles of birth and life, the wonders of devotion and sacrifice that connect each to all. here and now. May we recall all who have witnessed to life-enhancing values, spoke truth to power, stood up for human dignity and equity, and fiercely upheld compassion and aspiration. Wherever our wounds begin healing, wherever our fragments are reunited, when our spines stiffen and our muscles grow stronger for the task, there is ministry, there is worship.
Each week we light a chalice. This is a symbol of the Unitarian Universalist religion, and congregations here throughout the world use this symbol to unite us. And if you will join me in saying the words, the chalice lighting words on the screen. Deep calls unto deep, joy calls unto joy, light calls unto light. Let the kindling of this flame rekindle in us the inner light of love, of peace, of hope. It's time for our Time for All Ages. So if you're a child or a young person and you'd like to come up to the front, please do so. And I'm going to be asking for some assistance. So even if you don't come up front, you might want to help me out. Welcome. You brought your friend with you, I see. Okay. Julia was a very small, very plain, very gray rock. Would anybody like to hold up Julia? Would one of you like to hold up Julia for me? Will you? Okay, great. Just hold it up so everyone can see. Julia also had a big dent on the top of her head. Instead of a nice round dome, she lived on a riverbank surrounded by other rocks. They were all beautiful colors, shiny and perfectly round. There were also huge, bulging boulders, leafy green bushes, and tall, regal trees, cottonwoods, aspen, pines, and larch, all unique and awesome. And the river burbled its song as it rushed by. The other rocks would often have rock parties, but Julia wasn't invited. They laughed at her and told her how ugly she was while admiring each other's colors and shape. The boulders mocked her size, telling her she had no heft. And they would turn their broad backs to her. The bushes would push at her with their roots and tell her to get out of the way, and then turn up their leaves at her. The trees would look down on her but not see her at all, as though she didn't exist. And the river was in too big of a hurry to even glance her way. Julia felt very small and very alone. One day, a lizard named Leonard came along. Would somebody like to hold up? Leonard, do you want to do it? Okay. So you just stand back here. Okay. One day, Leonard came around. He was darting around the rocks and boulders and the roots of the bushes and trees. He was very small, very plain, and very gray. When he saw Julia, his eyes lit up and he ran straight for her. Do you want to run over to Julia? No? He's close in his mind. Okay. He said, "Hi, I was just noticing your beautiful gray color. I also see there's a nice big dent on your top that would be very comfortable to lie in. If I was sitting on top of you, I would blend in and the animals that want to eat me wouldn't even see me. Would that be okay with you? For the first time, Julia felt seen and appreciated for who she was. Still, she was a little nervous. What if Leonard started making fun of her? But she overcame her fears and said yes. Leonard climbed up and settled in, and they soon started talking and became friends, even though they were very different. Julia was set in her rock ways and didn't budge much, and Leonard would leap quickly from one thing to another and do lizardy things. One day, Leonard asked Julia if it would be okay for his other lizard friends to join them. Julia said she would like that. So I need some more help. Would somebody like to hold up this lizard picture? Anybody? Grown-ups can do it. I've got a couple more. Would you like to hold one? Okay. How about you? Would you like to hold one for me? Okay, I can hold it. Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. So Julia said she would like for these other lizard friends to join them. It wasn't long before there was a community of gray lizards gathered on top of her. And if you would like to be part of this little community, you can hold up your hand like you're a lizard. See lots of lizards out there. They all became her very good friends. And even though her size and color hadn't changed a bit, Julia felt very beautiful and very large indeed. So much so that she didn't even notice that the other rocks who had laughed at her were now mossy green with envy of Julia's loving, joyful, supportive community. And thank you to my helpers for helping me tell that story. And now if the people sitting on the aisle will form an arch, you guys can go through the arch.
Small moments or big moments in our lives. To do that, you need to come forward and speak into the microphone, say your name, and then speak as briefly as you can. For some of us, that's longer than others. I will bring the light down here so you can light a candle if you want. You can ask me to light a candle. Remember, always only share things that you have permission to share. Always speak respectfully. Always invoke the values of this community. As recorded in the Digha Nikaya, close to 3,000 years ago, Buddha said, "There are some who dispute, corrupted at heart, and those who dispute with their hearts set on truth. But a sage doesn't enter a dispute that's arisen, which is why a sage is nowhere constrained. Now, one who is cleansed has no preconceived view about the states of becoming or not becoming or being anywhere. Having abandoned conceit and illusion, by what means would that one go? For one who is involved gets into disputes over doctrines But how, in connection with what, could the saint argue with the uninvolved? That one has nothing embraced or rejected, has let go of every right view, right here, everyone. And then from Modern Man in Search of a Soul by Carl Jung, I apologize for his gender-exclusive language. Everything that is unconscious in ourselves we discover in our neighbor, and we treat him accordingly. We no longer subject him to the test of drinking poison. We do not burn him. We do not put screws on him, but we injure him by means of moral verdicts pronounced with the deepest of conviction. What we combat in him is usually our own inferior, unconscious side. That ends the two readings. I was having an ancient reading and a more contemporary reading on the subject of the day. But now I have some more words from Buddha, from his ancient words, oldest Pali language scripture. Imagine your own heart full of unselfish joy. And after these words, we'll just go into silence. Imagine your heart full of unselfish joy, abundant, grown great, measureless, without hostility or ill will. Extend that image to include someone you love. Imagine many people close by in your family, in this fellowship of travelers with their hearts full of unselfish joy, abundant joy, grown great and measureless. Without any hostility or ill will, imagine these people. And if you can, let the mind pervade 1/4 of the world with thoughts of unselfish joy. And so on to the second, pervaded with unselfish joy. And so the third, and so the 4th quarter, and thus the whole wide world. Imagine above, below, around, everywhere, and equally pervade with a heart of unselfish joy, abundant, grown great, measureless, without hostility or ill will. In that spirit, let us meditate or pray in silence together. One key to our way of religion is understanding that there's really only one ultimate truth in which we all must live, and that ultimate reality, whether it is the source of evolution, the subject of science, or it is a divine being beyond our understanding, that one source is the source of justice and love and kindness and fairness and equity and compassion. It moves in all of us, and we are trying to claim it and live more fully in accordance with its guidance, the values that arise from it. One of the values, one of the names that we have that we've been holding up as a Unitarian Universalist value is equity. To imply that value to our living is to declare that every person has the right to flourish. Every person has the right to flourish with inherent dignity and worthiness. And as Unitarian Universalists, we covenant to use our time and wisdom and attention and money to build and sustain fully accessible and inclusive communities. And because language can include or exclude, provide dignity or prevent it, I want to repeat those values, Unitarian Universalist written values en español. Equidad. Para aplicar ese valor a nuestra vida es declarar que toda persona tiene derecho a prosperar con dignidad y con valor inherentes. Así como unitarios y universalistas nos comprometemos a utilizar nuestro tiempo, sabiduría, atención y dinero para construir y mantener comunidades plenamente accesibles y inclusivas. These values, this value of equity, is paralleled in many other religious traditions, different words and different ways of approaching it. And it includes the four highest mind states in Buddhism, known as the Brahma Viharas, or the homes of the holy. And these include metta, which is the loving kindness. Many people know that, being loving and kind and wanting good for other people, to do good. Compassion, which means to feel suffering with others' suffering, to feel their pain and want to do something about it. Equanimity, which is an ability to go from joy to sorrow, from challenge to possibility, from abundance to scarcity, and back with a sort of balance and a centeredness. And then mudita. Buddha invoked mudita more than 2,500 years ago. English has no one word like it, so it's usually translated as sympathetic joy, or I like to translate it as delighting in the delight of others. The classic illustration of mudita is to come upon an infant or a toddler who is smiling and happy. And you just look in their face and it's this pure, absolute joy, and you can feel the joy in your own heart immediately. Mudita is joy in the joy of others. But that's not what I was thinking about when I chose this sermon topic. I had just watched the Super Bowl halftime show. And I wondered what would move Kendrick Lamar, accompanied by so many dancers and singers, to disrespect his one-time friend Drake in the center of our national pastime on television. I know the two have been exchanging insults for more than a decade. Drake has insulted Kendrick, but Lamar's accusation in his song, which invokes that very divisive us and them imagery. The title of the song is Not Like Us. It pushed their feud into new territory. He rapped, "Say, Drake, I hear you like them young." And then he makes this great musician's pun. "Why, you trolling like a bitch? Ain't you trying to strike a chord?" And it's probably A minor. Ain't you tired just trying to strike that chord, A minor? As a result of this accusation, Drake has been threatened, his family has been put in danger, and a guard at his house was harmed. All by those who were stirred up by this song. The happy energy of the rap invokes for me an idea of sang-froid, 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 pleasure in the misfortune of others. But of course, it's more complicated than that. It's not just that the nation seems to like that song and somehow relate to its high energy, but also ignore the evil, the hurtful quality. Now, it is essential that if there are people who are engaged in pedophilia, that you call out that behavior. You need to say that that is wrong. And you need to turn people away from harming the sexual identity, the social identity of small children. It's essential to confront behavior that is harmful, hurtful, destructive to community. But this is not what's going on here. This is just an attempt to use the worst language and imagery possible to drag down another human being. Kendrick's first big album in 2002, Good Kid, Mad City, tells the story of his adolescence, crowded by the drug-infested street culture, the gang-saturated lifestyle of his native Compton. Received wide acclaim, and then in 2019, the Pulitzer Prize Board recognized his next album, Damn, as a virtuosic song collection unified by its vernacular authenticity, not my normal language here, vernacular authenticity and rhythmic dynamism that offers affecting vignettes capturing the complexity of modern American life. I remember working on the streets of St. Louis, working with guys whose entire life had been in gang culture. And they talked about the violence, and they talked about the struggle. It reminded me also of Jeffrey Canada, named for a country that once was one of our allies. And Jeffrey Canada wrote a book it's published in 1995 by our Beacon Press. And it's called Fist, Stick, Knife, Gun. And it was talking about how, as a small child in the Bronx, he learned that when you ran into a new person, you immediately had to establish what your status was with that person. And it was like that in St. Louis. It's like that in so many places where there's this culture of you have to figure out who's lower and who's higher. And you establish that usually with your fists. Some sort of physical altercation where you establish, I'm the upper and you're the lower, and then you can be friends and tell jokes and get along with each other, share food. And then if the consequences of your status is not just one-on-one, but has to do with social status, sometimes the level of violence has to be increased. And so there's sticks, and then there were knives, and then gun sellers started freely pouring weaponry, gun violence into this culture of dissent, struggle, and status, establishing status and gaining status, and it caused great violence. And I've talked before about the horrid violence that was in northern St. Louis had been the black part of St. Louis. All the middle-class blacks moved out into the county, and all the most impoverished, limited people, human beings, that were left behind were left with nothing but guns to establish their relationship with one another, guns and drugs. But notice, Lamar and Drake have risen above that at a certain level. They win awards for their music, still evoking the pain and the struggle and the disassociation that came from both racism and violent culture. Another writer, Vanessa Goddard, said, "None of us wants to be disregarded or discredited, shamed or condemned. We never want that. All of us want some degree of fame, or at least to be seen, to be acknowledged, maybe even admired. Our belief in a solid, independent self, which needs to be constantly shored up and protected, kicks the desire for dignity and honor into high gear. Fame, we think, shields us from irrelevance and, more importantly, from non-existence. Deep down, our desire for recognition is a protection from our ultimate fear, the fear of not being valued, of not being important. And now even very rich people who get into political struggles still engage in the struggle, the culture of dis, which is to drop some other person below you. If they're opposing you, obviously they are less than you. And to shove them down and to disrespect them in any way you can. The current president of the United States has dissed all sorts of people to gain votes and power. He disses people from real immigrants to imagined immigrants, to an Episcopal priest who he called boring because she called for compassion, to a federal judge who simply opposed his ideas, and instead of accepting the reality of our checks and balances, he dissed that judge. He gets approval and he gets a power for that behavior, just as Kendrick Lamar gets the Pulitzer Prize for behavior that is not comported with finding the best in people, lifting them up. There is some of that in his work. He's trying. There are many times where he's talking about the goodness of other people, or the power in his own heart, or the desire for love in his own heart, but it's all mixed in with hatred and fear and anxiety. There's nothing new in this, of course. Nothing new in this. Dante Alighieri, who died just after the year 1300, so 1300, 700 years ago, wrote the story of how he went to hell and back again. And he went to this part of hell, which he called Dis. He said it was called Dis. It's the entrance to the lowest and most terrible circles of Satan's realm. Thieves, hurtful thieves, liars, deceivers, murderers, betrayers, treacherous, sowers of discord and others all dwell there. And they're all dwelling in eternal discord. Hatred, anger, anxiety is intensifying. Dis, the name of the city, is a name for Pluto, who was one of the gods of the underworld, the lord of the underworld. And the roots of the word discord are from the Old French for other or different, and cour, which comes from the word for heart. So discord arises from people having different or divided hearts. So the stones on the river in the story didn't think, oh, here's another stone, different stone. Let's all find our similarities and affirm those and be a community together. Instead, they isolated her. They dissed her. They hurt her. I recently but this is not our values, of course. Our values is to seek the worth, dignity. The word dignity is about your inclusion, that you should be a part of society and you have rights, like you can vote and you can speak up if you need to and you can be included in meetings. And these basic things that we do all the time are ways of affirming dignity and then worth, that you have some value, no matter what your physical capabilities are, no matter what your mental capabilities are, you have value in community. And it's always, I talk about this all the time, the amazing number of people who come here because we have the right political slant, or they like it because we're involved in feeding the poor, and then they find that there's this community of people who will care about you and who will pay attention to you and who will listen to your stories. And that linking of human beings into a community of value is one of the most powerful things on the earth. That's why we're growing or having trouble finding enough chairs. I keep thinking, we should just put some little, almost nobody sits up here. We should just put some ratty chairs here and move those back. Eventually we're gonna have to build a building maybe. I recently read about a woman who's named Daisy Hernandez. She was struggling with alcoholism, and she became angry with a friend of hers. The friend, who was somewhat selfish and self-absorbed, kept making little slights over and over, little things, just doing things that irritated, and Mrs. Hernandez, Daisy, was just getting really troubled by this woman. Started getting filled with resentment. She couldn't stand that other woman eventually. And she just stopped talking to her. First she was kind of saying mean things, and I'm not going to have anything to do with her again. And then she was reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And she found, she says, a passage that basically says one way to let go of resentment is to pray that anything you want in your own life be given to the person who offended you. And she adds, you don't have to mean any word of it, but you're supposed to do this as a prayer every day for 2 weeks. She notes, because she's been studying Buddhism, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous did not call it mudita, but that's basically what it accounted and sounded like to me. Take joy in imagining joy in another person. So it's about finding your own joy through the joy of others. And at first she wrote some things down in her little prayer book that seemed really insincere and just inappropriate. It just irritated her, and she said, this is going to fail. But then she crossed out all the first list, and she wished first for her ex-friend to have a good cup of coffee that morning. Daisy explains, yes, I knew she hated coffee, but I wanted a good cup of coffee. So I wished it for her too. And I thought, it might sound like I wanted to make her joy an anti-joy, my joy, but here's what's happened. I started to feel some room in my heart for her, maybe to like coffee. Then I started coming up with new things. She started coming up with new things that she wanted her friends, like a mug in her kitchen that pleased her just to look at it, or an easy commute to work that day, or really friendly, warm interactions with her co-workers. It was things that she wanted, Daisy wanted, but she could imagine the other person wanting them too. She could imagine the other person getting them. The book recommended playing like this for 14 days of writing down your little prayer. I hope that the name gets. She continued this practice for 21 days. And the joys varied, she said. Some days they included an open window or a singing bird and sunshine. Other days they were centered on love and connection with family members. She writes, slowly I began to forget myself. To forget myself and to feel joy in what I wished for my friend as well as me. And in the end, after 3 weeks, I was free of all resentment, she says. She actually phoned her friend up, remembering something that she'd said in the last days that they've been talking, and she apologized for what she'd said. And her friend forgave her. And then later in the week, her friend called her back and told her about something really good that had happened in her life. And not only did Daisy feel happy that her friend had found something joyful, but she felt a part of that joy, connected to that joy, growing the goodness and the love and the community that she so desperately needed and wanted in the world. That her alcoholism, troubled family relationships, it all undermined. She was trying to restore it, to recollect it, to regrow it. Over the years, she has found this technique. She's used it for over a decade now, and she has found that it brings her closest to whatever the Buddha was talking about when he talked about mudita, sympathetic joy, resonant joy. She does admit sometimes it's hard. Mostly it's hard when one wants to hold on to self-pity or personal slights or nurture fantasies of revenge. I will admit, though I don't think what the President of the United States is doing is very good or right or kind sometimes, I will also be rude and kind in my minds, and sometimes my wife will tell me I start to rant about the President of the United States. I will say bad things about him. I'll try to drag him down, and what I've been trying to do is imagine that he hears His heart is already open to some people. May it be open to more and more people. May he understand that he is part of an interconnected world, not just an arrogant country. It shifts this practice, shifts your mind. That joy, like everything else, is a habit that can be cultivated and you can nurture. Love and joy, the song we were singing earlier today. Opening to love, learning to love. In a global community of human beings and so many other living creatures. We are trying to build a movement of hope and pride and power beyond the wealth of oligarchs and crafty political operatives, beginning with our own need for joy and freedom and appreciation and abundance. The spiritual teacher Panavati said in one essay titled, "Encourage others by overcoming your own suffering. The truth is, everybody is not going to love you or accept you. You have to have enough love and acceptance for yourself, and when you keep on building just that and find the people who will help you build just that, acceptance overflows and spills onto those who deserve it and even those who don't." So let us now listen to some music to help us be still with the source and the center of love and joy. Let not the joy that we find in others, our awareness of abundance and goodness, our love of life, and our willingness to share that with those who are in suffering and need, let those not fade at all, but go with us stronger and vibrantly out into the world as we begin again in love.
And now, as we extinguish our chalice, please join me in saying the words printed in your order of service or on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and embody in our lives until we are together again. Now we'll form our circle and join hands and sing our closing song. But stay for coffee afterwards and the forum.
Hi.
So I thought we were going to be able to be part of that meeting, but I didn't even hear anything about